We are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret society, opposed to secret oaths, opposed to secret proceedings, secret proceedings. No official of my administration, whether his rank is high or low, should interpret my words here tonight as an excuse to censor the news, to stifle dissent, to cover up our mistakes, or to withhold from the press and the public the facts they deserve to know.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Conspiracy Corner Podcast. I'm your host, Abe Williams. Samantha Williams is not here today. I've got two little stories that I want to share with you. One of them is a biblical passage. For anyone who keeps up with the channel, they know that I'm kind of agnostic. I'm not really Christian or anything, but there is some certain stuff that interests me within the Bible, especially when it comes to like the Nephilim and stuff like that. So this is a passage, actually let me backtrack a little bit. I've made several Bible videos. You're welcome to check them out. I have a playlist. I think it's literally just called The Bible. So if you want to check it out, you can see the other stuff that the other passages I've read and talked about and stuff on there. They're not in like a podcast format, but it's up to you. This one was something that me and my buddy Dave were talking about. For some reason, he had gotten on the subject of David getting Goliath's sword back. And I didn't remember hearing about it or reading it. And come to think of it, I kind of remember reading it when I was younger. My dad used to make us read the Bible like once a year. Throughout the year, he like spaced it out. So I did read it, I just didn't recall it. I'm drinking some coffee, so. This is 1 Samuel chapter 21. Then came David to Nob to Ahimelech the priest, and Ahimelech was afraid at the meeting of David, and said unto him, Why art thou alone, and no man with thee? And David said unto Ahimelech the priest, The king hath commanded me a business, and hath said unto me, Let no man know anything of the business whereabout I send thee, and what I have commanded thee, and I have appointed my servants to such and such a place. Now therefore, what is under thine hand, give me 5 loaves of bread in mine hand, or what there is present. And the priest answered David and said, There is no common bread under mine hand, but there is hallowed bread, if the young men have kept themselves at least from women. I don't know why that's funny. I guess it's like holy bread. Which is strange because obviously communion wasn't invented yet, so I'm not sure, but I mean, I guess really, honestly, the act of like God eating was around back then in ancient times, so maybe that's what it is. Maybe more like Jehovah's body instead of Christ's body. Maybe. And David answered the priest and said unto him, Of a truth women have been kept from us about these 3 days since I came out. And the vessels of the young men are holy, and the bread is in a manner common, though it were sanctified this day in the vessel. So the priest gave him the hallowed bread, for there was no bread but the shewbread that was taken them before the Lord, and to put hot bread in the day when it was taken away. Now a certain man of the servants of Saul was there that day, detained before the Lord, and his name was Doeg, an Edomite, the chiefest of the herdmen that belonged to Saul. And David said unto Ahimelech, and is there not here under thine hand spear or sword? For I have neither brought my sword nor my weapons with me, because the king's business required haste. And the priest said, the sword of Goliath the Philistine, whom you slewest in the valley of Elah, behold, it is here wrapped in a cloth behind the ephod. If thou wilt take that, take it, for there is no other save that here. And David said, there is none like that, give it to me. And David arose and fled that day for fear of Saul, and went to Achish the king of Gath. And the servants of Achish said unto him, is not this David the king of the land? Did they not sing one to another of him in dances, saying, Saul hath slain his thousands, and David his 10,000s? And David laid up these words in his heart, and was sore afraid of Achish the king of Gath. And he changed his behavior before them, and feigned him mad in their hands, and scrabbled the doors of the gate, and let his spittle fall down upon his beard. Then said Achish unto his servants, Lo, ye see the man is mad. Wherefore then have ye brought him to me? Have I need of madmen, that ye have brought this fellow to play the madman in my presence? Shall this fellow come into my house? So I don't know. That's chapter 21 of 1 Samuel. It's just something I found interesting. I don't know. I mean, if you're not really that big into Christian stuff, I think honestly the Bible has historical documents in it as well. And I'm very interested, definitely, in the Nephilim and stuff like that. So, to me, when reading that and hearing about that, that's like some, like, I don't know, it reminds me of like Final Fantasy or something, like a Buster Sword, you know? Because it says like the spear itself that Goliath had was like huge, like 10 foot long or something crazy like that. So the image of like this little dude running around with a giant sword killing people, I don't know. To me, that's badass, you know. But one thing that made me think of is, where is that sword, you know? Because the Catholic Church, they've got like all these relics. I did like a whole little mini series on different relics and stuff. You could find it in one of the playlists. Probably occult items. It's somewhere in there. I've done like a little mini series on relics, so check it out if you haven't. But yeah, so like you would think that they would have found it, or maybe archaeologists have looked for it and stuff. Like maybe, I don't know. I don't really have internet, so I mean I can't look it up. But I can't recall either ever coming across anything like that. And for me, I've always been interested in stuff like that, like people looking for King Arthur's sword or holy relics, you know. I myself have been on like a personal grail quest, you know, for a while, so that type of stuff interests me, you know. Normally I start my podcast out with a little, just letting you all know how I'm doing, like a little personal, just what's going on. Basically, me and my wife have been looking for an apartment. We looked for 2 different other apartments, but got kind of shut down on it, so that kind of sucks. But we're still looking. I got plenty of people on a list. I've been texting my older brother, trying to get a hold of him, trying to get a hold of his landlord, but him and my mom, I don't know. I guess I've pissed them off beyond all forgiveness. I don't know. It's kind of sad because both of them say they're Christians, but My mom, I know, is pissed at me because I don't know. She's believing something that's not true about me, and instead of just talking to me, like a normal human being, she just assumes it's correct, instead of just going, "Hey, Abe, I've heard this. Is this true? What's going on?" But I don't know. You can't. Well, I almost said you can't fix blank, but you can't control people. They're gonna do what they want to do, and honestly, it doesn't really bother me, man. Um, Me and my mom's relationship, I'm the type, like, I could literally go to Haiti and save children for a living, and it still wouldn't be good enough. So I don't know. I've given up on trying to please her. But here's a little short story. Since I don't have internet, like I said, I wasn't expecting really to have that many podcasts to put out. But I actually came across a book that would be useful for podcast. It's called Haunted Houses. It's written by Nancy Roberts. It's 24 different haunted house stories. So I figured I'd choose several of those and put them in podcast format, tell the story, and then kind of discuss it afterwards. But I'll go ahead and read one out of here. This is called The Hatchet Murders, the Lizzie Borden House, Fall River, Massachusetts. Sheets of rain wrapped the car, obscuring Phil's view of the Interstate 95, and drops fell of a staccato rap on the roof of the new Chrysler van as they made their way from Wareham to Providence. Marcy wiped mist from the inside of the window beside her. "It is really bad, Phil. Why don't we stop and spend the night somewhere?" "It isn't that far from your sister's now. We can be there in about another 2 hours if the rain lets up. And if it doesn't, Phil, the radio just said the storm is the edge of a hurricane. The Fall River exit should be coming up soon. Let's turn off there." "And stay where? I don't know anything about Fall River." "For some reason the name sounds familiar," said Marcy's. "But we could try a B&B. That would be a pleasant part of our trip." "Marcy Rollins, only you would think of making a funeral trip pleasant." "Well, we don't need 2 funerals. Ours from having an accident in this downpour, and my brother-in-law's too." "That's true. Does Cindy need you tonight?" "I really don't think so, Bob. Bob's sisters are there at the house." Another barrage of rain pummeled the van, and the headlights of the other cars became more difficult to see between the rivulets of water on the windows. "I'm going to give her a call on the car phone and tell her about this weather, Phil. Isn't the Fall River exit coming up?" "Yes, I'm going to take it." The answer at the first B&B was not encouraging. "We don't even have the small room left, do we, Amy?" The owner asked his teenage daughter. She shook her head. "People leaving the interstate to get out of the storm, I guess." "Do you have any suggestions?" asked Phil. There's one at 92nd 2nd Street, suggested the girl. "Of course, there's nearly always full up, but you could try them." She suddenly giggled and said, "If you don't mind staying there." Her father gave her a reproving look. "That's never good." His directions were clear, and a few minutes later they were peering down through the rain at the front of an austere 2-story frame home. Narrow as it had looked when they drove up, it went back further from the street than they had realized, and was actually quite spacious. "You're lucky tonight," said George Quigley at the desk. "We usually have reservations a long time ahead, especially during the month of August. But these people," he tapped a name on the register, "I'm sorry to say they've had a death in the family and have had to cancel. We can give you their room. It's the guest room, the one where Abby Borden's body was found." "Bad weather out there tonight, isn't it?" he commented, shaking his head. "How about some cold cider for you, or milk and our homemade cookies?" We have pears too, of course. Milk and cookies sound great, said Marcy, placing her suitcase beside the door. Wasn't the way he said pears strange, she said to her husband after their host had left for the kitchen. I didn't think about it one way or the other. The milk and cookies appeared almost instantly, and the Rowlandses sat down on a black horsehair sofa. The furnishing of this house are remarkable, exclaimed Marcy, reaching for a cookie. Oh, do you like them? We researched to find authentic pieces from the 1850s, said Martha McGinn, one of the owners. Some of the furnishings were either originally in the Borden house or are very similar in style. That right there is definitely kind of important to take note of. Anytime you bring in furniture items from a scene where something horrible happened, it's never good because a lot of people who believe in the supernatural and believe in ghosts and demons and stuff like that, I don't know, they believe that they attach themselves to items and stuff. That, or they also have a lot of ghost hunters use what they call trigger items, which is like items to trigger the ghost and spirits of the dead. Perhaps like items from around that time period, or items that have to do with a certain case, you know. Oh, look at this cookie. What a strange shape, exclaimed Marcy. Don't be rude, honey. It must be for Washington's birthday, said her husband. In August? Exclaimed Marcy. Hatchet-shaped cookies are one of our specialties. And of course, August is special too. Since today is the 4th, we've led our anniversary reenactment of the Hatchet murders of Andrew and Abby Borden. I'm sure you've read about the famous crime. A crime here, Marcy said breathlessly. Now we understand if it makes you nervous, Mrs. Rowlands, said Kathy Goncalo, who works at the desk. And we've had a list of other bed and breakfast places. Phil could hear the moan of the wind and the rain beating against the windows, and he had visions of driving through it to discover the accommodations were non-existent. Of course they could drive back to the highway to one of the chain motels. We really are not that nervous, he said with a smile. Well, sometimes people are, especially with the history of the house, you know. I'm not, said Marcy. I think it's absolutely fascinating. I love mysteries. I don't know, that just reminds me of like me and Sammy. I believe we'd go to a place like that on purpose, you know. But then again, we love that type of stuff, so. This is one reason I wish I was rich, so I could actually go to these places, you know. I thought that might be why you and Mr. Rowlands came here. Actually, we're refugees from the storm, said Marcy. So it wasn't because you wanted to spend the night at the Lizzie Borden bed and breakfast after all? Lizzie Borden? The name sounds familiar, said Phil. Oh, yes, said Marcy. I remember it all. Poor Lizzie was suspected of murdering her father and stepmother. Now I know why the name Fall River had such a familiar ring when I saw the sign on the interstate. And that's the reason for the hatchet-shaped cookies. I don't see why it should upset us now, said Phil. It's all happened over 100 years ago, didn't it? Yes, 105 years ago this month. I'm glad you and your husband aren't scared, Mrs. Rowlands. I think what bothers people most is not that there was a double murder here, but that it occurred in such a gruesome way. As if people consider some murders not as bad as others, said Marcy thoughtfully. That's an interesting idea, isn't it, Phil? Not to me, Marcy. I feel horror over any murder. It breaks one of the laws of God. Oh, hang on just a second. A wasp is trying to get me. Seriously, bro? I'm in the middle of recording. That's alright. I'll kill you. Oh, shit. Hey, at least y'all are getting some excitement. Wow. Well, that's how you know it's live. That's awesome. Well, if you hear buzzing, that's because I just squashed the hell out of them. If anything, it lets you know that I record this live without edits. Well, there's a reason I do that. We have like a pause button on here, but I do it in one go because I always push the wrong button, and I end up like accidentally splicing it and stuff. So my wife does all the editing. I'm not very good at it, and where she's not here right now, she's at work, so I don't feel like messing around with it. I'd like to get this out today for you. Let me see. Where was I at? Especially one that has never really been solved, said a guest who was sitting in a nearby easy chair listening. Hope you don't mind my interrupting, but everyone has a different theory, Mr. Rollins. Is that right? My name is Bernard Breckenridge. How do you do, said Phil. Breckenridge continued. And they say that after it happened, some couples actually divorced over disagreements about who did it. Imagine that. How ridiculous, said Marcy. Let me show you some of the interesting things in the house, Mrs. Rollins, said George, offering them cider, cookies, and fruit. Why don't you take this pair up to the bedroom with you, Mr. Rollins? You may decide you need a snack for later. Phil Rollins hesitated. Do take it. We always keep plenty of pears on hand. It was Lizzie's favorite fruit, and she said she was eating pears out in the yard under a tree at the time the Bordens were murdered. But I thought she was supposed to have, began Marcy. Killed them? Said longtime employee Kathy Goncalo. No one really knows and probably never will. Lizzie was certainly a prime suspect, but she had a good lawyer and was acquitted. And what do you think, Mr. Breckenridge? Asked Marcy curiously. I'm not sure. Sometimes I think she did it alone, and sometimes I wonder if she didn't have an accomplice. A man whom she began to fear later. Everyone has a different opinion. We'll have a tour of the house in the morning, said George, and point out where all the members of the family and the maid were supposed to have been when the crime took place. Why don't you stay and see what you and your husband think, Mrs. Rollins? Wouldn't that be terrific, Phil? Go ahead. I know you want to, Marcy. I'll go up to the room and read USA Today. Fine, honey. See you soon. Are you sure this won't bother you before retiring, Mrs. Rollins? Not a bit. Let's go. Phil took their luggage up to the bedroom. It was really like walking into a world of his grandparents, he thought, as he gazed at the old-fashioned furniture. Everything was just perfect. The bed and its pillows edged with crocheted lace, the bureau cloth, a white linen towel with a fringe, all very quaint. He was glad now that they had stopped here. He put the newspaper on the bureau and placed a small alarm clock from his overnight bag on the bedside table. A meticulous man and an experienced traveler, he never trusted the clock in the room or a wake-up call anywhere he stayed. Then he took out his pajamas and fresh clothing for the following day. Suddenly, he noticed that the room was cold. That's another thing with haunted places is usually the room or areas go cold. They say it's like spirits like pulling energy in from our world, so it changes temperature. They say too it's when like spirits are feeling like super high amounts of emotion or something too. So let's see. Suddenly he noticed the room was cold. It had not seemed chilly when he came in. Well, no matter. He would just lay his new L.L. Bean robe across the chair and put it on while he sat and read. He began to unbutton his shirt, and as he did so, turned toward the old-fashioned oak bed. His fingers stopped at the second button. His hands began to tremble. The appearance of the bed was very different from only a few minutes ago when he had entered the room. Instead of the coverlet being perfectly smoothed, it was now quite rumpled. But that was not the important change. Its folds were rearranged so that they corresponded to the curves of a body. and it was not a slim body. On the pillow he saw the indentation that could only have been made by a human head. Marcy returned to find her husband sitting fully dressed in the downstairs sitting room. His face was very pale. "Why are you down here?" she asked in surprise. "I thought you would be in bed by now, honey." "Marcy, come upstairs. I want to show you something when you go in." She stared at him in bewilderment as he put the key in the door of the room. "If something is wrong, why don't you tell me? Tell the owners. I'm sure they will take care of it." "Because I thought you should see this first. Look at the bed." Dramatically, he flung the door wide and stood aside while she preceded him into the room. "I'm looking. What's the matter?" The bed is what's the—" He stopped in mid-sentence. The pillow was plumped up and the coverlet was smooth as it had been when he first entered the room where Abby Borden was resting when she was brutally murdered more than 100 years ago. What do you think? That's pretty wild, right? I don't know. I think it'd be neat, you know. It would be crazy, though, to just be laying there and then all of a sudden it feel like someone lay down next to you, you know. Or to have your head like right in the spot where her head was when it got cut off. I don't know. It's wild. Next morning, Phil sat in embarrassed silence where Marcy related his experience over a hearty breakfast of oatmeal, orange juice, eggs, sausage, and Johnny cakes. I guess that's pancakes. Some people call them like Johnny cakes or flapjacks or hot cakes. "Oh, how wonderful. Why doesn't something like that ever happen to me?" moaned one guest. "I've heard some people have woken up in the night to see a woman in Victorian clothes dusting the furniture, and some have even had her straighten the blankets over them as they were laying there." Martha McGinn noticed that Phil Rowland's face was quite white, and he did not seem interested in his food. "Incidents are sometimes reported here by the staff, but seldom guessed," she said comfortingly. "People who work in the house say they hear the sound of footsteps of doors opening and closing mysteriously. But I think any spirits we have around here now are friendly ones. Visitors like to discuss their theories about the crimes, and they ask lots of questions." "I have my own idea about what happened," said Marcy. "I scanned some of the books and brought a transcript of the inquest documents. You should read it, Phil. I think I know who murdered both of them, and it wasn't Lizzie at all." And then there's a little paragraph here. "The Lizzie Borden Bed and Breakfast Museum is thought to be the house active with spirits. Some guests have reported hearing voices and the sound of a woman weeping. Others tell stories of unexplained footsteps and doors mysteriously opening and closing. In addition to reservations for overnight accommodations in summer, the Borden House opens at 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. daily for half-hour tours, so you can go and just go to a tour. It is located on 92nd 2nd Street, Fall River, Massachusetts 02721. And the phone number, if it's still active, is 508-675-7333. And that's 508-675-7333. So if you're up in the area, you can go and visit it. I would love to, but Massachusetts is so far away from Kentucky. But there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. I might actually do another podcast on Lizzie Borden. I believe I have a book called Lady Killers, and it's full of like short stories of different lady killers throughout history. And she might actually be in that. So I might do one not so much covering the paranormal side of it, but the actual murders itself and the trials and all that. So let me know in the comments if you would be interested in something like that. I know it's Conspiracy Corner podcast, but we like to focus on paranormal, religion, spirituality. Honestly, I wouldn't mind delving into like the serial killer realm, you know. Just anything like that, anything that I find interesting, because a lot of the serial killer stuff kind of goes into the paranormal. And some of it goes into conspiracy stuff. I mean, the whole Lizzie Borden murder, it sounded like hell, people were getting divorces just by disagreement. So it sounds like there was a whole conspiracy around it. So I wouldn't mind going into it, on another podcast. This one's going to be a little shorter, around the 30-minute mark, but that's fine, because that's all I got for you today. I'm going to go ahead and I'm saying this like past tense or future tense, I should say, and try out the new theme song we have that was made by Dot Orbix, the same person who made our other theme song we were using. Being Numb is the name of the other one. That was honestly just something that he had given me like probably about 2 years ago, and I just was like, hey, that'd be good for a podcast until I get like an official theme song. So I hope you like the new official theme song. It's probably one of my favorite speeches by JFK, basically talking about secret societies and all that. But pay attention to the speech, definitely, of what he's saying. I don't know, though. I would like to definitely hit on heavier subjects and topics like that, like the conspiracies that actually matter, the heavier stuff. But right now, where I don't have internet, I don't want to delve into it too much. I want to focus more on paranormal and stuff like that, the lighter conspiracies and lighter subjects. But I will definitely get into that whenever I get an apartment. We're honestly going to wait till payday and stack some more chips and then try again on a couple more other landlords and stuff. So, yeah, they told us the one I called, me and my wife make too much. And it was like an income-based one. And it was like we were paying $475 before in Danville and barely getting by. And this one was $450. So it would have made it a little easier on us, water included. And they're like, yeah, you make too much. And I'm like, make too much? I'd love to see what you're talking about, because me and her, we don't really live lavishly. So I don't understand how we make too much. But I don't know. If you don't succeed, try again. We're going to stack chips for another week and try again on some other different landlords and stuff. Hopefully we can get something soon so I can get some internet and put out more podcasts for you all. But you all have a good day. Let us know what you think about any of the stuff we talked about today in the comment section. Let us know what you think about the new theme song. Like and subscribe. Share if you want. Please share if you know anyone who likes podcasts or likes these types of subjects, because that really helps our channel. We're wanting this channel to take off, so I could perhaps make this more of like a part-time job, put out some merch, stuff like that for you all. But you all have a good day.
We are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret society, opposed to secret oaths, opposed to secret proceedings. Secret proceedings. No official of my administration, whether his rank is high or low, should interpret my words here tonight as an excuse to censor the news, to stifle dissent, to cover up our mistakes, or to withhold from the press and the public the facts they deserve to know.